Welcome to the Navigating Disruption podcast. I'm your host, Shaquille Barmel. I'm the CEO of Ocean Blue Strategic and partner with the Summit Group. I'm a coach, consultant, and speaker, and I help leaders, entrepreneurs, and sales professionals make an impact through improved performance. In this podcast, I share insights and interviews with interesting leaders to define practical lessons that you can use to make an impact in the face of uncertainty. Danny Kelly interviewed me for my first job. It wasn't your typical interview, or the one I prepared for. You will hear that story here. Danny was one of those influential leaders in my career. I didn't report to him, but he earned my respect because he was a teacher. I could go to him with any problem, and there'd be no judgment, and usually there'd be laughter, but there was always lessons learned. Danny and I first met when I was in my 20s and he was in his 40s. He was a sales manager. And now, 30 years later, Danny is still working. He's still teaching. He's still mentoring. He's the regional manager of Powersource Canada. Listen in as we reminisce about the good times and the lessons we learned. Enjoy the conversation. How you doing, Danny?
I'm doing good.
I'm thrilled to be able to connect with you. Thanks for making the time.
Hey, no problem. I'm proud of you. You're doing really, really well for yourself.
Good for you. Thanks, Danny. You know, I have to say, I've really enjoyed what I'm doing with these interviewing people I've worked with in the past, and I can't tell you how much joy it's brought me.
Yeah, I can believe it.
It's like going back to your grade 1 teacher and being able to say all the things that you learned and how it impacted me. It's kind of like been like that. So it's been really fun.
Yeah. That's kind of neat. I listened, I think it was one with Jeff, I can't remember now. And I thought, that's pretty cool. Pretty good.
So I don't really actually know all the questions we're going to ask you because this is just a free-flowing conversation. I do want to start with this memory because, you know, there's certain things I can tell you now that I'm 50 years old that I was probably too scared to tell you when I was 23.
Oh, okay.
And I don't know if you knew this, but when I was interviewing for the job to work at Mohawk Lubes, I interviewed with Jeff and then I interviewed with you and John Grad. And you two scared the crap out of me.
I was probably more John than me.
I'll tell you what it was. It was actually, I remember the exact sentence. It was something like, and you got to effing go to the plant and tell them we need our product because we can't do business.
That was probably me.
Oh, man. Danny, you turned out to be one of the best mentors in that time of my career. You know, there's a few things very clearly I learned from you. When there was conflict between sales and manufacturing, what I learned later in my career that is more common than not, right?
Yeah.
Conflict between sales and manufacturing, conflict between marketing and sales, but I got to see it firsthand. And what I also witnessed with the way you and John managed things is you could have conflict and tell people what you thought in a conversation, but then it was over, right?
Sure. Yeah.
I remember when Matt, the plant manager, came over one time and we were talking about pricing, setting the pricing up for the next year. And you guys were going head to head. And I was this guy in the corner of the room taking notes. And you guys were going head to head. And then it was lunchtime. And John said, "Should we go for lunch?" And then we went for lunch. And it was nothing but howling laughter all lunch. And everyone was happy. And I thought, oh, this is really great. Everyone's in a good mood again. And then we went back in and back at it.
Like in the room. Right?
So separating personal relationships from business conflict. That was my first chance seeing that. And I realized it's really important.
Shaquille, I honestly think back then, like I do a lot of stuff based on my gut feel, right? And I knew Mohawk, like, I mean, we were all part of somebody's family, right? And like your dad had the station, right? So there's that little connection. And sometimes you got to try even harder.
Yeah.
You can like coach as kids sometimes, right? So I tried to be mindful of that when you came in.
Yeah.
But right from the beginning, I honestly did have a good gut feel like he's a good guy. He's going to do okay. You know, like I was instantly comfortable. I was trying to say to you, hey, like this isn't an easy job, but like for us to accomplish what we need to accomplish,
Mhm.
we need you going to the plant and telling the guy to get off his ass or whatever it
Yeah.
needed to be, right?
Yeah.
You know, and I remember even saying to you, and he meant this is not like a 9 to 5 or
Yeah.
right.
You say
It's
that. You say that.
right. But I think I felt at the time you were the right guy to say that kind of stuff to, because that was going to make us a better group, and you're going to know from the start, like
Mhm.
this is not a skating rink. Like everybody's going hell bent for leather, and we need somebody in that position that would do that with us, right? And it's not just becoming a part of the team; it's being a competent player and a competitive player on the team, right?
Absolutely. I mean, so it's really important uh, to let people know what the heck they're getting into, like being
Yeah,
straight with them and kind of not being all sunshine and roses. It's
right.
about, I'm going to tell you what it's really going to be like.
Yeah.
You got to make your decision knowing that.
I mean, there's times in my life, I know this for sure, at Mohawk and at my other places I've worked, where I've kind of probably said too much sometimes or said it in the wrong tone, or but that's I try really hard not to do that. But at most, I'd say 95% of the time, I'm honestly trying to say something to somebody without offending them or poking at them or what. It's kind of, sometimes it's your style and sometimes it's okay and sometimes it's not. And there's times where I've said, oh man, I shouldn't have said it that way.
Yeah. But
But again, like you and me, all these years we can still just get together and have a phone call and have BS. Like it's
absolutely. I mean, your sense of humor always helped the situation. So even if you were talking about something serious, you could easily switch and throw in a joke and make me laugh at the same time. So it kind of kept things in moderation, which I think is
remember
also.
we went to Regina. Remember I picked you up?
So for the because this is like an inside joke, so I'm going to let other people in there listen to this. So I leave the lubricants team after about a year and a half. You guys gave me a really hard time for deserting the team, but I went to head
Yeah,
office. And then about a few months in, you actually got another job, pretty cool job, taking over the growth of the branded distributor
yeah,
network, mostly in the
yeah. That
prairies.
was cool. Yeah,
And so you
yeah.
called me and said, I want you to come over to the prairies and tour things with me.
I think back to that time, Shaquille, and I think I had so much confidence in you
Mm.
that I knew that you would come with me and you would bring something to what I'm trying to do, because honestly, I thought you kind of started your career with us, but
Mhm.
that was just your start. I knew you were going somewhere. Honestly, I did. And I think I worked for a guy years ago, Roy Street, actually from Castro, and he always says to me, "Don't be frightened to have good people with you,
Yeah,
because they're just going to make you stronger.
yeah,
Don't ever think they're going to steal your job or any of that kind of stuff. Just make sure you're part of it. You've got good people with you." And that's what I was looking for from you. I thought, like, Shaquille's kind of guy, he's going to come with me and he'll look at it and he'll tell me if I'm full of BS, or he'll give me a good opinion, or he'll probably contribute something good to this. And I just thought we worked great together,
yeah. It was good.
right?
It was good. You mentioned the name Roy Street. After all of these years, I've never met the man, but in you telling me stories and coaching me when I was younger, you mentioned that name. And when you mentioned it to me now, right now, I remembered you
Yeah,
mentioning that name. So that name is somebody that's influenced you and
oh,
still
for sure.
stands out. What what was the biggest thing he gave you back in the start of your career?
Roy always had a few balls in the air, kind of thing, right? He was always thinking, and he was pretty open with his thoughts, and he wasn't, if you went in with something, he wasn't the kind of guy who would just go, no, no, that's never going to work. He would at least listen, unless it was something outrageous, right? But I just found him, he was genuine,
Yeah,
right? He was just a really good guy. And one thing that did strike me away,
yeah,
after he met you,
yeah,
he'd come back a year later and he'd remember your wife's name and your kids' names, and like he was just really connected with you, sort of thing. He
yeah.
passed away about 3 years ago now, And one of Brian from Duckham's in England, I still keep in touch with him. He sent me a note, let me know that Roy passed away. Kind of.
Remind me, because I wanted to dig in way back when I worked with you, but I wasn't, didn't have the presence of mind then. You actually got your start as a mechanic, right?
Yes.
Can you kind of walk me through how you went from mechanic to basically being a manager in a corporation?
Shaquille, I tell you, I worked in Scotland. You had to be in a trade as an apprentice by the time you were 15 and a half. Okay, because you left school at 15. And I was joining the Merchant Marine. I'm going to see the world. My three brothers had been in, my grandfather had been in, so I'm not going to get an apprenticeship. So I joined the Merchant Marine, went for a couple of years, came back, worked with Daco belts kind of thing. And then when I emigrated, I thought I need to get a trade. And you have the opportunity in Canada to start a trade almost at any age, right? And I was pretty mechanically sound. So I took an apprenticeship. And I worked for a Citroen Fiat dealer in Calgary, and then finished up at another Fiat dealer and then the Jeep dealer. But I was in my fourth year of my apprenticeship, and the guy from Castrol Oil came in, and he used to call on us, and he says to me, how about you come work for me? You know, and I kind of, really? And he says, yeah, you've been good at this, Danny. Well, I said, yeah, but I got to do my apprenticeship and stuff. And he says, well, give it some thought.
Yeah.
We'd be open to interviewing you because I think you'd probably a fit for us. So then I went to my instructor at the SAIT at the time and talked to one of the guys. He was a really good guy. And he says to me, you know what? Do you really want to be a mechanic for the rest of your life? And I said, no, I wouldn't mind being like a service manager or something, but I don't want to be a mechanic, to tell you the truth. And he says, so pull the plug, go take the sales job. He says, and if you come back in 2 years, anybody will hire you as a fourth-year apprentice, no problem. Yeah. So I did. Yeah. That's exactly what I did. I got interviewed with Castrol, took the job, and kept my toolbox in the basement for a year because you just never know, right? And then I was with Castrol.
So you had somebody that kind of gave you a shot at it, gave you an opportunity.
Yes. Yeah.
And then you went to seek advice and seek help from somebody, and they
just to get someone to bounce it off. And again, I went to a guy, one of the instructors that I thought was because you had different instructors even at SAIT, right, for different electronics and all that kind of stuff. And this guy, Norm, is just super good guy.
Yeah.
You know, and him and me just kind of connected sort of thing. He was like a big brother or dad or something. I don't know at that time, but just the kind of guy I can go and ask him, and I know truly he's going to tell me. Yeah. You know, and that's what made me make the switch. And, you know, the funny thing is, the Irish guy that I went to work with, Morris, again, like Shaquille, I've been so fortunate that most of the people I worked with are good people. Like I just, you know, sometimes you can't, they say you just fall in and you come out smelling like a rose kind of thing, you know, and this guy, he interviewed me, then his boss, John McDonald. Do you remember John McDonald?
Totally remember John McDonald, absolutely.
John was the general manager of Castrol at that time, right?
Oh, okay.
So then he interviewed me, and then they decided, they're going to bring me on board. So that was me into the sales game kind of thing, right? And then they moved me to Vancouver in 79 or something, because they were going from a bunch of jobbers to just having 2 distributors. So they're going more distributor base. Yeah. And then that's why I finished up out there. And then when Roy came out there, I'd actually switched to work for CleanFlow, which was a sister company for a couple of years, straight commission. And Roy phoned me one day and said, how's it going? And they just bought Spartan. They just bought Spartan Oil. So he phoned me, hey, why don't we go for lunch? I said, why don't you come work with me? Gosh. Mohawk. And I'm saying, re-refined oil? Roy, I work for Castrol right now. And he says to me, well, come see the plant and then tell me what you think. So he took me for a tour of the plant and I saw the process. And
it was ahead of its time. It really was. Ahead.
Just excellent, actually. When I looked at the quality and what they were doing and how they were doing it. And
well, you know, just so everybody who's listening that doesn't know anything about re-refined lubricants. So we would have trucks going out collecting oil from tanks in the back of garages, and the oil would come back. We would take it to this plant in North Vancouver and clean it up, process it over and over and over again. And like out the other end comes beautiful, golden, clear
Yeah.
base oil.
It's one. Yeah.
It was amazing to see that early in my career. It was so proud to know that you were part of something like that.
You know, Shaquille, the real secret that they had as Mohawk at that time was, if you bring in garbage, you've got a lot of garbage to dispose of, right? And the real good move that guys long before I got involved did, they had it set that you only picked up the best of the best almost, right? So when all the drivers had pipe wrenches,
Yeah.
and I know when I joined with Belcorp, I gave them all aluminum ones because those big steel ones were pretty heavy. Yeah. But the idea was drop the pipe in, take it up 6 inches or so, clamp the pipe on, right? So you weren't taking all the dregs. And then, of course, the benefit for Mohawk, well, the stations was we managed their tanks for them.
Yeah.
So it kept their tanks clean and we didn't get any junk kind of thing, right?
Yeah, it was all locked up, I remember, to keep water out and all that kind of
thing. Even when we went to a garage, like internally in some garage, we still didn't put it to the bottom of the tank. Because it was the better you bring in, the less you have to deal with.
And that isn't that life works, garbage in, garbage out. That keeps one of the things I remember, one of the biggest insights I had in that time, I was working on a project to kind of see if we could develop a strategy for growing the lubricants business when I moved to the strategy department. And I remember a big light bulb went off when I asked, I can't remember if it was John McDonald or he had already left. It was Chris that took over for him. And I asked the question, what is your ideal state in business? And they basically said, if we sold every drop of our product as base oil, that would be our dream.
Yeah.
Then you go over to the lubricant sales team saying, what's your dream? Well, we want to sell this product and this product and this product, which had there were specialty lubricants with additives and all sorts, because you can get a higher price for that, higher margin for that. And I realized at that moment that we had two parts of the business that were actually set up to be in conflict. So unless you could find a way to navigate the interests and align the interests, and that was actually the first time in business that I realized that unless you get at the base level, people aligned as to what we're trying to accomplish here, you're going to see conflict happen. And I think that was a big part of the conflict we had around pricing, and everything stemmed from that.
Sure. And I think based on that, again, you've got one group that are targeting because they're marketing guys kind of thing, right? And you've got the other guys that just want to turn all the gears and all the pumps on. And just let the stuff flow in and flow back out again, and not a lot of interaction with anybody.
Yeah, absolutely.
Or cost attached, right? And they were both right.
Yeah. One of the things I remember, I still can picture it in my head. I had a cubicle like way back when I first started. It was like almost by the fire exit. Like they just put me in a corner there when I first started. And right after lunch one time, you strolled over and you said, hey, come with me. And then you took me for a walk in the warehouse. And as we walked, you were kind of asking questions out loud of, when you see this rack empty, what does it make you think? And then you'd walk around and say, when you see that guy running around like that, we got a big order coming in. And you taught me how to basically manage by walking around and pick up things and observe signals and ask questions. I use that practice for the rest of my career. I was just finished being a COO at a large organization, and I would regularly just pop around the office, walk around, and the things you'd see, you'd hear when people didn't know you were coming, nothing bad, but you'd hear a few things, pack it away, and you remember. And so really great lesson you taught me about just sometimes get out of your desk and go look around. Around.
And I think if you don't need to become one of the guys. But you just need to be there with the guys and gals sometimes and just see what's going on and have them so that, I remember an accountant, I think it might have been Freddie Ginger that said to me one time, if you want to get 10% saving or trim off the fat of 10%, don't go to the employees and tell them we need 10%. Just tell them we need to try and do some trimming and tidy things up and see if we get a better margin or something. See, you'll get more than you would ever ask for.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's how I felt with people in the warehouse and all that kind of stuff. We're
Yeah.
just walking with the guys kind of thing, right? And then people start to tell you stuff.
Yeah. Absolutely.
People feel confident with you, right? And I think no different than you and me. Like I said, when we went to the prairies, I was really comfortable with you coming,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
took Gary comfortable once. I wasn't quite as comfortable with him because he's sort of looking at everything, trying to compare it with something, right?
Yeah.
You
He's
were kind of there
judging.
going,
Yeah. I'm curious. He was judging, right?
yeah, yeah.
Well, that's one thing about that trip I remember. I'll tell you the story and you'll remember it because you clearly have an amazing memory for little stories. You asked me to come out to the prairies in the dead of winter, right?
Yeah,
So you told me it's cold in the prairies
yeah.
dead of winter. So I did my research, and the day before I'm getting my flight to arrive, I think it was in I don't know what, Regina, I think, or Saskatoon.
Regina, yeah. We're on like a 2 o'clock flight or
So
something
I go to
coming
Mark's warehouse and buy the biggest parka I could find. And so I show up at the airport with my parka, and you're there almost in a short sleeve shirt Sunday and saying, yeah, you won't need that. We got a heat wave.
in. Yeah.
So I
So
got
you
this
were equipped and
parka
ready,
on a
right?
hot day, running around the city with I was like 20-plus-year-old kid, and it was a sunny day, and I had this
On
parka.
a Sunday too, eh? It was on a Sunday
It
too.
was on a Sunday too, absolutely.
Yeah,
Remember that.
yeah.
But speaking of that experience as managing the branded distributors, trying to grow that, I mean, you were doing deals at kitchen tables,
Oh yeah, for sure.
right? We were in farm country, and
Yeah,
and I
yeah.
remember,
I remember I
yeah,
did one in Langenburg, Saskatchewan,
yeah, I remember that.
and I had to go out and get the contract signed.
Yeah.
And I went to the house. The guy's wife took me in a pickup truck out into the field. He climbed down off the combine. She climbed in the combine and kept going. And he came in the pickup truck with me. And we sat there going through the documents. But I pre-sent him a set so we didn't have to read every word kind of thing, right? But, we still had some questions. And I remember there was mosquitoes in the inside the truck and everything. Probably sat in the middle of that field for about 20 minutes or half hour.
Yeah.
And his wife kept going up and down with the combine. Yeah. And then he finally came or she came back and he waved to the window and she brought the combine over. He climbed in, jumped in the truck and took me back to the house, and I got my rental car and went back to the hotel. And that was the deal signed and done. But like the guy's farming, he's harvesting. Like you just got to kind of work in with them, right? Yeah, but that's why they were such good people.
Yeah.
Right? It was just a different way of doing business. But if you go, like I learned right at the very beginning, don't go there with a suit and a tie on. They'll think you're from the government or the bank and they won't like you. Right? So you just kind of dress for the occasion and became part of what they do.
And yeah. I remember years later. So again, I'm back in this organization, COO, and I'm responsible for stewarding our big sponsors and donors. And one of the family, so there's a company that owned a lot of car dealerships, and they were big sponsors of ours. So I'd go to Calgary and I'd go meet them. On a Sunday, I was at Earl's in Calgary with the owner of the company, his son, his daughter, son-in-law, and his wife, and we're having lunch at Earl's. And I remembered you then because we took that family out to the keg that one night, right?
Yes.
The family out. It wasn't just the deal we're doing with the CEO.
No.
Whole family.
Yeah, because they're part of this. They're part of it somewhere, right?
Yeah.
And it's just, and I think inclusiveness with a lot of things. I mean, it's the same. I had the guy up in Campbell River, Ross Hicks.
Sure.
And I made sure I included his driver and his bookkeeper anytime we went for lunch with Mulak and me or whatever, right? They just, just make them part of it because there's a lot of companies you can deal with. If somebody takes a dislike to you,
yeah,
you may be the person in the back that nobody really notices.
Yeah,
they can make it really tough.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
So keep it. You got to be professional, but you gotta include everybody and be informal when you can be informal. That's how you.
Yeah, I mean, I think sometimes companies get tied up with their brand, and they think the brand is everything.
Right.
And the brand is extremely important.
Yeah.
Boy, I'll tell you what, it's tough to sell something if people don't like you.
Absolutely.
Or if you rub them the wrong way. And you have to recognize that sometimes Sometimes I remember calling a guy in Lethbridge
Yeah.
at the counter, and just something about him.
Yeah.
I got along with all the other counter guys.
Yeah.
And way back then, it's back in the 70s, I smoked.
Yeah.
He didn't like you if you smoked.
Yeah.
So I learned then not to light a cigarette before I went in, so at least I didn't have it on my jacket, kind of thing, right? And then over a period, him and me got along fine.
Interesting
But
you
it just
say that.
I did.
Yeah.
He
Well,
didn't
you
like
just said that about people and relationships and the value of a brand. So there, I have data to prove that, what that point you just made. Years later, I was doing some work for Auto Trader. They do this, the advertising of the cars.
Yeah.
And so I was training their sales organization, and we just finished doing a study. And the study involved asking their customers, their loyal customers, saying to rate the value they received from Trader as a company. And a separate question to ask them to rate the value they received from their sales professional. And Trader had a really good brand, but the value provided by the sales professional was significantly higher than the value provided by the company. And I think that is the case. And people, when they forget that, that's when they go off track. When they forget it's the relationships and the people that are what really makes the difference. You need the
this
other
company,
stuff. Yeah.
this company I'm at now, Powersource, like we give amazing service.
Mm.
And I compare it with the service I get sometimes when I'm dealing with manufacturers, whatever. And we really would consider number one or number two in our industry, kind of with all the dealers. But I never forget to ask the dealer, how are we treating you? How are we looking after you? You know, or if they say, hey, Danny, we got a problem with something, talk to them right away.
For sure.
Right?
Danny, I know how proud you are of your family. And so I am sorry I didn't start with that question, but give us an update on the family.
Oh, everybody's doing good. We just, you know, Mark's across the street from me with his wife and the two kids. My daughter Lisa lives a block and a half away from us,
Okay.
with her twins, boy and girl, and then an older son. And you know, we're battling this thing with same as everybody else, but we're fortunate. You know, if we can't get to see them, you know, I've got a young lad that works with me. Him and his wife just had a baby 3 months ago. His mom and dad are in Montreal, right? So we're within a block of each other almost. So we all get to see each other, and everybody's doing good. And you know, even when Mark came, well, Mark was really with Belcourt before I was, right? But super proud of the kid.
Yeah.
Right, you know, I mean, he's done really well. And my daughter Lisa teaches voice and musical theater, and the kids all love her. And you know, you just kind of just sort of keep going, right?
Yeah.
And you know, I'm 71 now, and people say, when are you going to quit working? I'm not sure.
Yeah, that was going to be my question, but you answered it. So
Yeah.
yeah.
And my boss says to me, "You're not leaving anytime soon, are you?" And I can go, "No, not really." So,
that's amazing. That's amazing.
like I said to you earlier, I'm so fortunate. Like you mentioned John Grant.
Yeah.
Right?
Is he
Super
still,
guy to work.
is he still around?
Yeah, as far as I know, he is.
Speaking of John Grant, like I'm very nostalgic and sentimental person, and I remember things very clearly. So first day, my first sit down with him when he was teaching me about doing tenders, like we were used to do well tenders for the military bases. And he sat me down, pulled out a notepad, and he goes, the first thing I'm going to teach you is always write down the date at the top of a page. You know, a lot of things happen, things go crazy, but you can always go back and find a note that you wrote on a particular day. To this day, every time I write a date on the top of a page, I think of John Grant.
Sure.
Like, he was like, you know, always dressed impeccably, right?
Oh,
like always had a good suit on, fit well, really real class act. But I remember one time, and he also had a temper.
Oh, a little bit. Yeah.
He had a temper, but I learned one day that the temper was sometimes a tactic, because I was, you know, one of the problems that I inherited, which you prepared me for, was the issue of out of stocks, right? And nothing makes a sales guy more upset is than selling a big deal for a truckload and then finding out we're back ordered. So I remember there's a particular day, and all I guess we were out of stock on something, and John comes from the warehouse, walks out, and he just starts yelling at all of us in inside sales. I was taking it very personally that we have no product in the back. We have no product. I want everybody to pack up and go home. There's nothing to do. There's nothing to sell. Just go home. And I'm like shivering in my boots because like I feel like I'm responsible, right? And then I'm tall enough, so I see him go around the other side of the cubicle, and I see hit the upper part of his face, and he's laughing. And I realized at that moment, okay, thank God, like he wasn't serious. He wasn't really angry. He was just making a statement. But that was it, right? The humor and the playfulness was always there, which was really
Oh
neat.
yeah, yeah. Everybody knew they had something to do, and I mean, I've said it to people over the years too. We all have to come to work.
Yeah.
And we all have to be nice to each other. We don't have to hug and kiss each other. We have to be presentable and nice with each other. But we got to have a little bit of fun while we're doing this. We're going to be here for a while, right? It can't all be just sort of stern with a big stick kind of thing, right?
Yeah.
But I remember John coming in one day and saying bye to everybody. And they were going, what's happening? I'm the next millionaire. I just won $1 million. I got this. They send this to me. And it was that, what was it? You know, the magazine that.
Whatever, the Ed McMahon sweepstakes.
Yeah. And everybody's just, some of the people are going, John, that's not real. You know, and he's going, oh no, it's even got my name on it. They've sent it me ahead of time. He was just priceless with some of his humor, right?
Great sense of humor. Just a really great sense of humor. And I learned a lot. I learned a lot from watching both of you. I mean, that was my first career experience. So I had the comparison of a Jeff Mulock style, right? And I interviewed him so people know about his style. And then I had your style and John's style, which is in some ways the other extreme, but actually, you know, now that I think about it, lots of similarities, right?
Sure.
Care for people, you know, make mistakes, it's okay. But there was a difference in the frontline approach. And I learned both sides. And I talk about it a lot now. And I shared it in my interview with Cause, Hercules and Buddha. You need both the Hercules, hard driving, push people hard, and then you need the soft side and the empathy. And I kind of had that. I had the Hercules with the two of you, and I had more of the Buddha with Jeff, but there was enough commonality to make that an amazing experience.
Yeah, and I mean, I worked with Jeff when they brought Jeff into that group, and he became the general manager basically for our group. And I learned a lot from him too. Like he was pretty composed, like
always composed
99% of the time, right? And nothing kind of made him go. He just went, okay. And some days it used to drive me nuts, right? He was like, "Can you get annoyed about this?" And then, of course, with Jeff, the other difference between Jeff and John Granamy was that Jeff was always late and always forgot his wallet.
That's true.
I remember one day we were driving back from Langenburg and we're about half hour towards Saskatoon, and he says, "Oh, I've left my binder." Yeah. Like he was just bad for stuff like that, right? So he phoned the dealer. He says, "Can you go back?" "No, I can't go back." Phone the dealer and said, "Can you put on Pure later for us tonight?"
The other fun thing about Jeff, I remember when I was talking about Jeff, is that he used to work late one night a week. And do you remember he used to measure his progress by how many pieces of paper he had on the floor?
On the floor, yeah.
Throwing stuff on the floor. And then when he had the floor was covered, then he knew it's time to go home because I've done enough work for the night.
Yeah, we had some great people, eh? That's why we all stay somewhat connected over the years, right? You know, Jeff Campbell. Gary Cartwright. I mean, I worked for a lot, Roy Street. I worked for some great guys. Even Jim Wright way back in the days after they bought Spartan.
Yeah.
And you know, not only met really good people, but actually worked with good people. And I never ever thought I would experience the Mohawk thing again.
Yeah.
But this Powersource crowd, pretty close.
And
I still go to the annual lunches and all that kind of stuff for the Mohawk crew.
Yeah. Well, I've had great leaders and great career experiences, but there was something very special about those Mohawk years, and everybody feels that way. There was, like, I think you said it, family. We were all just figuring things out. We were nice to each other. It was really an amazing, amazing time in my career.
I mean, it's actually quite amazing that a lot of people go to work and don't have a lot of fun, or they don't like their job, or they don't like the people or what they're doing. And, you know, guys like you and me, we've been pretty fortunate over the years.
Well, Danny, thank you. It was fantastic catching up. And I hope that we'll stay connected.
Absolutely.
Sure. And I'm really glad to have found you again. Danny, thank you very much. Take care. Be safe. Have a great holiday with the family.
You guys too, Shaquille.
And let's hope at some point next year I can see you in BC.
Yeah, maybe we can go for a bowl soup or something.
Yeah, that'd be fun. Take
Right.
care. All right.
Cheers. See ya.
That's the family.
Yeah, you guys too.
I learned so much working with Danny and the sales team early in my career. First of all, if it were not for that experience, I would have had a very different view of conflict. I didn't like conflict. I tried to stay away from it. But it was that experience that taught me that conflict actually can be productive. Being straightforward, honest, and candid is really important in business. Oftentimes, people on a team don't say the things they need to because they're worried that other people will react negatively, and they back away from it because they're worried about being judged as offensive. Holding back undermines the team and the business because sometimes problems don't get put on the table. I learned that sometimes when people are angry, if we can just focus on the root cause of the anger and not get swept up away in the emotion, we will see the underlying issue and be able to identify what needs to get resolved. In this particular case at Mohawk Lubricants, one of the most important root causes of the conflict between sales and manufacturing were misaligned incentives. The plant made money when they sold base oil, the base ingredient for other companies' products. It didn't require any additional processing. It was easy to do. And that's what they wanted to focus their energies on. And it made sense because it kept costs low. Whereas the sales and marketing team was set up and incented, in fact, they existed to market and sell branded products that had value-added components and work. And those products required blending, required additives, required labeling, required packaging, required transportation, required selling. All of these processes added costs. And if the prices for the manufacturing of the product from the plant were not low enough, the sales team were not able to be competitive as they added in all these other layers of cost. The sales team where I worked didn't want to carry too much product in inventory because it cost money to carry that product in inventory, and it would further reduce profits. So when they sold something that wasn't in stock, they expected the plant to turn on a dime and restock it. And when they didn't, that frustrated the sales team. And when you realize the sales team's livelihood, the ability to put dinner on the table was based on the commission they got by selling product, you can understand why they'd be frustrated. Now, the conflicts were not personal. The conflicts were man-made constructions based on incentives. I went on to see that pattern occur in many other places that I worked. Usually conflict was something to be avoided. And when it wasn't avoided, the parties would end up blaming each other, criticizing each other. But when you have a leader in place that allows just enough conflict to play itself out, to reveal the underlying systems issues, you can then start solving the bigger underlying problem. But without the conflict, oftentimes you wouldn't see this bigger problem. He also talked about Roy Street, right? His manager that was really genuine. And he talked about how he shared his thinking out loud. Danny still remembered lessons from that person, Roy Street, that he learned when he was in his 20s. And he is now in his 70s, and he's still citing lessons from that person. And so look at the ripples that early sales manager had in life. Danny passed on some of those lessons to me in my 20s. And here I am in my 50s, passing it on to you in a podcast. And those lessons have influenced my leadership. And so I have over time passed it on to others in my teams. So if you are in a leadership role, don't underestimate the impact and the longevity of that impact that you are having, not just on the people that you lead and the people surrounding you that you work with. You are also having an impact on the people that those people will be leading and interacting with in the future. And I encourage you, if you have a leader that you respect, that you appreciate, take the time to reflect on what you are learning from that leader. Recognize it, and perhaps even share it with them. Share it back to the person that taught you those lessons. And while I'm grateful that I got a chance to do that in this podcast and a number of conversations I've been having, don't let 30 years go by without letting the leader that you respect know the impact they've had on you. I learned how to be genuine from Danny. I learned about the importance of personal relationships. I learned the importance of telling it like it is and being candid. And I learned the importance of a sense of humor in the workplace. I hope you enjoyed this conversation. Have a great day. Thank you for listening. If you enjoyed this episode, please rate, review, or share it. I want to say thank you to one of my favorite bands, Late Night Conversations, for sharing their song Chaos with me and letting me use it in this episode. You can learn more about them on Instagram at LNC Connected. And here's more of their song Chaos to take you out.
Far behind my eyes, mediation, suffocation, it'll break me. Information in disguise. But when your eyes finally found mine, you were there, but I'm defined by the chaos in my mind. I believe what I perceive is a weave tearing at the seams, and I wonder what's behind. And my ears are bleeding, and the reason isn't the logic of the season, taking the pleasing from my soul and leaving me to die. And I feel the lacing, LNC like racing, unstationary animation, taking me from the purpose of